Okay, we're going to start now. Thank you everyone for your patience. I'm sorry, just had a bit of problems, just connecting. Okay, so Parsha Yitro. So we're all familiar with it being the Parsha that deals with the giving of the Torah. Hashem appears to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai. Excuse me, where the Aseret Dibrot, often translated as the Ten Commandments, but really the Ten Utterances. So it's really a big parsha, a lot of highlights, thunder, lightning at Mount Sinai. It's really a historical climax, probably the greatest moment in Jewish history, really the big one. Um, but it's interesting to note that the parsha actually begins with a different episode, and that's not with God's voice, but in fact with Yitro's voice. Yitro was the father-in-law of Moshe, and it begins with his critique. So not with the revelation. And we're going to find why it was important that the episode of Yitro had to come before the episode of the giving of the Torah. Um, and we'll learn as well that before Mount Sinai, beginning of the Torah, the concept of Yitro has to be learned. The Torah is not just a system of holy ideas, but the Torah needs a way of life. It requires systems, it requires humility, it requires responsibility, it requires sustainable leadership, and it's all these things that Yitro brought to the party. So we're introduced, the very first words of the parsha says, Vayishma Yitro. I won't go through all the Hebrew, but I'll just go through the English of the opening of the parsha. It says, Yitro, the priest of Midian, the father-in-law of Moshe, heard all that God had done for Moshe and for Israel, his people. Now it's interesting, we've got so many titles that the Torah stacks. We hear that he's the priest of Midian. What does this tell us? That he's a religious leader. Also tells us that he's not part of the Israelites. Father-in-law of Moshe. We obviously know that he's got a personal connection to the hero of the story. We hear that he hears and he responds to what he hears. He's not just merely observing, he's not just merely listening to something, but the listening causes him to actually respond and to actually want to join part of this nation, of this tribe. And it's interesting to note, and hopefully we'll end the shiur with this, that the parsha is not called Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. It's not called Moshe, main protagonist. It's not called Aseret HaDibrot, but in fact it's called Yitro. Why? Why is this parsha, which has the giving of the Torah, which has the 10 utterances, called after Yitro? And again, maybe I'll even go into that point now. The Torah is highlighting that the entrance, if you like, to revelation is not only spirituality, but it's something else. We need to be able to learn from that which is outside of ourselves. We need to be able to learn from other people. Rashi famously asks, just going back to the beginning of the parasha, what is it that Yitro heard? Because it just says, Vayishma Yitro, everything that Hashem had done for the Jewish people. So Rashi answers, particularly, he hears about the wondrous act of the splitting of the sea, Kriyat Yam Suf, and he hears about the war, the victorious war against Amalek. Now, again, if we think about these two events, they're almost dichotomous. And what I mean by that is the splitting of the sea is an unmistakable miracle. It's a miracle of the highest order, and it's obvious that God's involved. It's obvious that God's overpowering nature. But the war with Amalek, by contrast, is struggle. And we see human effort, and we see fatigue, and we see leadership. All these is coming to the fore, and Hashem isn't as visible as it is in the splitting of the sea. So Yitro, we see, is not only drawn to the wonder, that being the splitting of the sea, but he's also drawn to the realities of life. And again, this is an important point because many people are inspired by miracles, but fewer obviously are inspired by responsibility. So Yitro isn't just one for the miraculous. He's a true seeker of the truth. Um, Rabbis of blessed memory, Chazal, describe Yitro as someone who explored many forms of worship, and he's called the Kohen Midian, the high priest of Midian. In other words, he's dabbled in all other religions. He understands Judaism to be the true religion. He arrives on the scene and he declares, "Now I know, Atayadati, now I know that Hashem is greater than all the gods, having experienced everything else." So again, what Yisro is saying is not that I've heard something cool, heard something wow, but this is really, I'm trying to find the right word, existential, if you like, recognition that Hashem, the God of Israel, is not just one force amongst many, but he is the absolute force. He is the author of history. And now comes the key point. Where is this coming from? It's coming from Yitro, the outsider. Um, Outsiders often can see what those inside can't see, right? Sometimes we're too involved in a matter, and it's often in life, right? When you can't see the solution, you're involved in the issue, and it sometimes takes someone being able to look inwards from the external point of view that's able to come with the critique, that's able to come with the solution. And Yitro arrives. When he comes to criticize Moshe, and I'll go into that, but not criticism for criticism's sake. It's constructive criticism. He's not cynical, but he's absolutely clear-minded and clear-eyed. And the Torah wants us to know as a result that clarity of vision is itself holy. Again, not just the concept of Matan Torah and the pyrotechnics display at Mount Sinai, all that spiritual stuff, but clarity of vision is itself holy. So what does he actually say? The Torah describes Moshe's routine, and it says that Moshe would sit and he'd judge the people, and the people stood around Moshe from morning until evening. And again, at first glance, this sounds incredible, right? Moshe's true greatness. He's available. Moshe cares. Moshe is the tireless leader. But if we really examine it, and this is what we're going to see that Yitro is able to see, what is it connoting to us? It says that the camp's problems, the tribe's problems are constant. It's telling us that the lines are endless. Can you imagine, like you're queuing for your passport or your ID at Home Affairs? That type of scenario where the queues are absolutely endless. People are waiting.
Right.
Justice, if you like, has become a bottleneck. People can't get the answers they want quickly enough, and obviously that's problematic. And this is what Yitro is able to see. Um, Also, we need to at the same time see that when he says that Moshe is sitting, he's not sitting idly, he's not resting, but he's functioning. This is a problem as the sole center, the only, can't even say the center, he's the only authoritative person. So as a result of this, Yisro comes to him and he says, "What is this that you're doing to the people? Why do you sit alone? And all the people stand around you from morning until evening." Now, it's interesting to note Yitro doesn't ask Moshe, "Why are you doing this to yourself?" He says, "Why are you doing this to the people?" And again, so much comes out of this interaction with Yitro. Again, leadership, failure in leadership first harms followers, right? Moshe's model, how he's doing it, creates dependency, it creates frustration, it creates stagnation. And what does Moshe reply? He says that people come to me to seek God. When they have a matter, they come to me. I judge between man and his fellow, and I make known to them the teachings of God. By the way, I just want to, as a meander, just say the following. Many of the commentators actually say that this episode of Yitro, even though it's mentioned in the Torah before the giving of the Torah, actually takes place after the giving of the Torah. And why they're almost forced to say that is because, well, what then is Moshe judging? If you don't have laws which are given at Mount Sinai, well, what is Moshe really sitting and judging? It can only be that it comes after Mount Sinai. Again, Ramban, who says that we always have to take Torah in its true chronological order, unless we have to explain it otherwise. He'd say, no, read it exactly as the order as the Torah gives us. So the way I'm doing the Shiur is that it happens as it says chronologically in the Torah, that first this episode of Yitro, and then the giving of the Torah. Again, so when Moshe answers Yitro, he's being sincere. Excuse me. He sees his role as the teacher of Torah, of the judge, the person who's going to be able to judge on disputes. He's not playing power games. He's not looking for power, but he sees himself as carrying responsibility. But Yitro responds, and interestingly, the words he uses, he says, "Lot tov." Moshe, what you're doing is not good. It's not good. And if we think back, where else in the Torah earlier have we had this expression, Lot Tov? Hashem himself. After he creates Adam, the first man, he says, Lot Tov, it's not good that man should be alone. And therefore he creates Chava, he creates a partner. So meaning that when Yitro says Lot Tov, it's not an insult to Moshe, but really what it is more of a diagnosis, if you like, of a system that goes against what Hashem desired in this world. So lot tov, not good, means this is contrary to creation's purpose. It's not supposed to be that one person is dealing with absolutely everything. Hashem wants an ecosystem. Hashem wants a hierarchy. Hashem wants that the systems in place where the community feel that they're part of the solution, that they're part of the dissemination, that's the right word, dissemination of Torah and all its values. And Yisro warns Moshe, and he says, Moshe, you're going to wear yourself out, both you and the people. And what's interesting as well, one could say this is possibly the first time in history, never mind just Jewish history, where we have the concept of burnout and the warning against burnout. It's not good that one person should take on so much, even if he thinks that he's doing it for all the most noble of reasons. Taking on too much ultimately is going to mean that you are too thin in so many areas, and no one is going to get the best of you. No one is even going to be able to get any good from you. So while we have concepts in Judaism of Mesirut Nefesh, of giving oneself over, of sacrificing oneself for another, that's only in exceptional cases. But normally the rule is guard your life carefully. Guard your soul, guard your life. We've got to take care of ourselves. Torah doesn't glorify a leader who collapses under the burden of everything that he's doing. Torah glorifies the leader who builds something that's going to be sustainable, that's going to be permanent. And that's what Yisro is saying. So what ultimately happens as a result of what Yitro says, and what does Yitro advise? He says you need to build hierarchies. So a system of lower courts. So there'll be lower matters. There'll be these lower courts. There'll be slightly more sophisticated, more difficult matters which will come to a higher court, and those matters, Moshe, which really need your adjudication, will come to you. It doesn't all have to be you. And that's what Yitro is telling Moshe, that you can delegate, you can trust others. You need to be able to trust those among you to be able to do the job as well. That's the concept. Judaism isn't only about one person being in charge of the Torah, one person being in charge of the statutes. Torah is available to absolutely everyone. Again, I'll just divert again and say that's also the reason why Torah was given in the Midbar, in the desert. Because the desert isn't owned by anyone. It's ownerless. Anyone can enter and exit the desert, right? It's free for anyone. So too, the Torah is free for anyone. Anyone can study it. It's not restricted to anyone based on their station, based on their status in life. Eventually, we know that Moshe does follow the advice of Yitro, and in fact, he does appoint this hierarchy of courts. And in fact, Yitro actually gives him advice about who he should appoint as these judges. So it should be capable men, God-fearing men, men of truth, men who hate corruption. So again, it wasn't just ordinary men. It had to be people who could show themselves to be people of leadership, to be people of integrity. And so many of the qualities that we see in these qualities that we needed in the judges are qualities that we all should obviously ascribe to. God-fearing. We shouldn't be able to be corrupted. We should be those people who seek out the truth. Okay, so let me move on from that. Um, Maybe before I do, it's also important to show the humility of Moshe. And again, we know later in Torah it says of Moshe that he is Anav. He is the most humble of all people to ever have lived. Now think about it again. Moshe, you're the leader of the people. You've come out of Egypt. You're clearly God's intermediary to bring about all these miracles, all these, and you're the nominated leader that God himself has nominated. So you surely can be able to answer Yitro. We know that the Torah says, and I've just told you, that Moshe listens to his father-in-law. But he could have really answered in so many different ways. He could have said to Yitro, my dear father-in-law, thank you, but you really don't understand the spiritual weight. You're new here. You haven't experienced, you don't know what's going on. You're not from the system. I speak to God. God listens. I listen to God. No, what happens is Moshe listens. Leader shows that yes, you have responsibility. Yes, you have to take on the mantle of responsibility, but that doesn't mean that you're not humble enough to listen to the advice of someone else, and if it is correct, to implement it. Of course, what Moshe actually does is he goes back to Hashem, as Yitro had asked him to do, just to seek approval and to seek Hashem's stamp of approval that this is in fact what Moshe should do. And of course, Hashem agrees with it. A leader is capable, should be capable of saying, not everything I do is correct. And I'm open to correction, and I'm open to advice, and I'm open to changing for the betterment of society. Again, why it's placed before the giving of the Torah chronologically in the Parsha is, again, it's all very well having spirituality, it's all very well having laws, but if we don't have procedures, if we don't have courts, if we don't have the concept of delegation, if we don't have the concept of shared responsibility, the concept of a leader being able to develop and change, that all the structure, then society can cry out in ecstasy at Mount Sinai, but at the same time can straight away fight over parking space, fighting over where the one's parking his donkey. Again, because you don't have structure, you don't have compartments to put all that wonderful laws that you've just got. And the concept always being that despite the tremendous spirituality of Torah and the tremendous spiritual experience at Mount Sinai, Torah had to be lived in the ordinary. We know that the Jewish people, it says they journey to Sinai, and it says famously, Vayichan Ha'am, that the Neged Hahar, that the Jewish people encamp opposite the mountain, and it says in the plural, Vayichan singular. Should have said Vayachanu, and they encamped plural. And Rashi famously says that they encamped Ki'ish echad belev echad, like one person with one heart. There was a unity of purpose. They wanted to accept the Torah from God. Even though it's not mentioned in this week's Parsha, we know it was stated at the giving of the Torah, Na'aseh v'nishma. The Jewish people say, we will listen, and then we will understand. We know it's coming from you, God. Whatever God you give to us, we know has to be good for us. I mentioned this in Shiur, one of the mornings, that can you imagine if we had to understand absolutely everything before we engage with it? We never get anywhere in life. Can you imagine if before we take a tablet that a doctor prescribes, we need to understand the workings of absolutely every active ingredient in that medicine and how it interacts with the food we take and other medicines. We wouldn't take the medicine, but we trust the doctor, right? The doctors told us to take it. It's for our own good. We take it. Imagine if you had to understand a cell phone or the working of any technology before you use it. You would never come to use it. So God is much greater than a doctor. God says to us, the Torah and the mitzvot are there for you, and they're there because I know them to be good for you. Doesn't mean we have to understand everything before we do it. We have to trust that this is our Father in heaven who knows and wants our absolute best for us. And therefore we do the mitzvot. And that was the clarion call of the Jewish people at the time, Na'aseh v'nishma. Going back to the concept of unity at Mount Sinai, ish echad b'lev echad, one man with one heart. Unity doesn't mean that everyone is doing the same thing. No. Community needs, a society needs, Am Yisrael needs different roles, different jobs, everyone doing a different role. But what it does mean that everyone is pointed in the same direction. Everyone is bound by the same covenant, that covenant being the Torah. If you think of an orchestra, you think of a symphony, it's not going to be a wonderful sound if everyone is playing exactly the same note, if everyone is exactly playing the same instrument. The music only becomes beautiful music because everyone is doing slightly different. But there's a unity in the piece of music that they're playing. Again, hopefully that explains the analogy quite nicely of Torah. I mentioned that Torah um, he lived in the ordinary, and that's why Yitro had to come about, and Yitro had to give Moshe the structure and the shared responsibility and the concept of delegation. If so, why is there all that drama, the lightning and the thunder and the smoke and the clouds? Why does it have to be so terrifying? And again, we should never think that Torah is merely advice. We have to understand it and experience it as an encounter. It was an encounter like no other. The people must feel that it's not a social contract written by human beings, but this is in fact a divine covenant. If it was just nice values or it feels nice, over time it'd be replaced by newer values next week, right? If society was based on relative morality, then what's good today might not be good tomorrow. They have to be the sign, the miraculous. These are coming from the divine. These principles are going to be relevant today. They're going to be relevant in millennia to come. It's not just what feels good to a particular society at any time. And again, Sinai, this whole amazing experience at Sinai imprints this eternal message into the people. But another important thing as well is that we need awe, the Norah. We need the awe to balance the intimacy. Again, if we're only going to relate to Hashem in friendly terms, um, he's almost like our friend, right? And then we're only relating to him as a friend. And of course, that has so many pitfalls. If we only going to relate to Hashem as fear, we fear God, then we cannot love him. We're not going to have a warm relationship. So Mount Sinai teaches and touches on both the closeness and the distance, the love and the fear. And we actually see that. We have the people coming to Mount Sinai, but there are clear boundaries that are put in place. Past these boundaries, only a certain people could go. The majority of the nation couldn't go. Yeah, so they're experiencing something that only they as a nation can experience. There we have the intimacy, the love. But at the same time, guys, you've got to know your boundaries. You've got to know where you can't come. So it's the ahava, it's the love, and it's the intimate and it's the awe of Hashem at the same time. I took some notes. I'm not going to be able to go through everything that I wrote down. Um, as we all know, the 10 utterances, the first five, the right-hand side, if you like, are our commitments to Hashem. So we call as Bein Adam Lamakom, between man and God. And the second side, the left hand, or Bein Adam Lachaveiro, between man and his fellow. And of course, we have the commandment of honoring parents, honoring and respecting father and mother, that blend the two together. And it actually finds itself on the first part of the Ten Commandments, where we respect our interaction with God. Because again, just like God creates us and we owe respect to God, our parents create us. And we owe respect to our parents. If I could just touch on the very first one, And this also shows the concept of that it's not really 10 commandments, but 10 utterances. Because the very first one doesn't come across as a commandment. Although Rambam Maimonides does say that this is the basis of our emunah, of our faith in Hashem. But it says, I am Hashem, your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt. Where's the commandment there? There isn't a commandment. But what Hashem is doing is establishing a relationship. God could have said, I am Hashem, your God, who created heaven and earth. That's so much more um, incredible, so much more remarkable. Why didn't Hashem say that? Because Hashem wanted to make himself intimate with us. He wanted to create a relationship. I am the same God that just a few days ago took you out of the land of Egypt. And if we have a relationship, well, then we can understand why there are mitzvot, because every time we do a mitzvah, it's an opportunity to connect with Hashem and to develop and to foster that relationship that we have with Hashem. Hashem's telling us, I want a relationship with you. I'm the God. I personally took you out of Egypt. Me and not a shaliach. Me and not an emissary. Me and not a malach, an angel. I took you out. I'm the one that I want you to have a relationship with, and I want to have a relationship with you as well. I'll just briefly say that many of the commandments, in fact, repair what Egypt had, the ills of Egypt, if you like. That Egypt was not just slavery of the bodies, but it was slavery of the very spirit, slavery of oneself, the self. Pharaoh's message to the slaves, to the Jewish people, you are tools. Sinai's message, oh no, you creatures created in the image of God. I'm giving you the divine will. God says, I'm giving you my divine knowledge. You're a partner with me in perfecting this world. You're not a slave. You're not a mere tool. And again, the laws themselves reverse what Egypt had done. When murder was commonplace, now we have this that life is sacred. Adultery was commonplace. Now we have that relationships are sacred. Theft is outlawed. All the things that were commonplace in Egypt are now absolutely outlawed. What I want to maybe just end with is like this. Is that if what we think of maybe for contemporary application, how we can apply this all in our times in 2026. So we live in an age of burnout. We live in an age of overstimulation. We live in a world of mistrust, distrust of authority. We crave meaning, but we resist obligation, right? Any of the sound common. And Parsha's Yitro, our Parsha comes and speaks to us directly and says so many of these points. Leaders must delegate. A community can't just depend on one lone, exhausted figure. It teaches us that authority must be trustworthy. And those are the people that were appointed as judges, men of truth, God-fearing men who hate corruption. We're told that Torah must be accessible, right? It's given in the desert, which is ownerless. And that hierarchy of judges and courts, it said leaders of tens, not only leaders of thousands. It tells us that we have to have awe. And awe doesn't mean fear, but it means reverence. It means respect for God. It means reverence and respect for our parents. It means reverence and respect for leaders. But not a leader that is the be all and end all, not a leader who isn't able to take criticism, to take advice, and to try put things in place that can only be for the betterment of his people. We should really understand that the real revelation of Mount Sinai is not the thunder and the lightning and the pyrotechnics display, but it's really the covenant, the life that comes afterwards. And we know that every generation has to see itself as it stood at Sinai, and all our souls were at Sinai. So we don't live maybe with the smoke and lightning, but we have the choices. Will we build systems that make Torah livable, that make Torah part of our life? Will we accept critique and criticism with humility? Will we be able to share responsibility as Moshe did? will we be able to put that awe and respect in all our relationships where there's already love, but if we just put a little bit of more of awe, a little bit more of respect, then how much more can those relationships be so much more beautiful? So maybe in closing, I'll say that Parsha Yitro teaches us that the greatest revelation is not what God once said at Mount Sinai. It's what a people become when they live the message, the covenant of Torah daily. And that is the work of Torah. That's the work of every single day. It's not the work of one moment that took place millennia ago at Mount Sinai. Wish everyone a good night. Thanks for joining. Sorry that I came on late. I know it's early in the week, but I wish you already a good Shabbos. I hope to all, please God, see you all in Shiur. Have a good evening.